Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Mr. Wilson, and I'm going to be giving you my review of Meg 2 The Trench. Now, just so you know, I will be going into spoilers on this movie, so just a heads up with that. Not that anyone's really going to care with this kind of movie, but it's out there. Now, let's go. Okay, so first off, full disclosure, I just want to let everybody know that my favorite movie of all time is Jaws. Um, and it's, in my opinion, one of the greatest movies ever made. Now, I just want to throw that out there because with it being my favorite movie, I naturally kind of compare every shark movie that comes out to Jaws, which isn't really fair to other shark movies because I'm bumping it up against, as I said, one of the greatest movies of all time. So, with that being said, I was going into this movie and I pretty much had a low bar right off the bat. I was not a big fan of the first movie.
What happened last time?
I thought it was adequate for what it was, I guess. Just something to, you can watch and just see big, huge sharks cause all kinds of ruckus. Um, and even with that bar set low, the sequel here didn't do anything to elevate my feelings for this franchise at all.
You can relax. This place, Meg proof. I mean, Jonas was always afraid of this, but I was also thinking.
The plot in this movie is laughable.
Laughable, man.
It's about this company who, has this big research facility, out in the middle of nowhere, where they say, they're using this to, go down beneath that thermal line that was in the first movie, which is where the Megs came from, to go out exploring all Magellan-like unknown areas and whatever. But in, typical movie trope fashion, you find out, well, they're not in it, for the science. It's about the monies. And they actually have this other shady company under their umbrella who's mining materials down there for the dollar. It's a pretty weak concept, and I don't know. I'm not going to bag on it too much. At the end of the day, this still is a big, dumb shark movie. So the plot isn't going to be super relevant to your enjoyment of it, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it was really dumb.
This is stupid.
As far as the actors go in this movie, I'm a big fan of Jason Statham, or at least I used to be a while back in his Lock, Stock, and Snatch days when he was working with Guy Ritchie a lot.
Now, we are fucked.
And lately, he's just kind of been a typecast action hero for, well, I'm sure many reasons. Jason's a good-looking guy, and a lot of his action scenes kick ass, and I get it. But also, Cliff Curtis is in it, who I like him as an actor as well. He's back in this one. He was in the first one as well. So there are a decent amount of returning characters. Not everybody did return, and then they got kind of killed off screen in between the movies. Not surprising. But one of my bigger problems with this flick was the dialogue. As I was watching this movie, and especially for Jonas, Jason Statham's character, throughout the movie, it seemed like every single line he had, it's said and written like it was some kind of a punchline to a setup of a joke.
Just a little bit.
And and it wasn't just him. A lot of other characters did it to a lesser degree. But it just seemed so weird. I was watching, for example, if you ever said to someone hey, I'll see you tomorrow, and their response was, not if I see you first.
Shut up. Just shut up.
That kind of stuff. It was just all over the place in here, It just, I don't know. It's probably not gonna irritate people as much as it did me, but for some reason it just stuck out like a sore thumb to me as I was watching this movie, and I know there was quite a bit of that in the first flick as well. Another thing that stood out to me as I was watching this was there were two or three scenes in this movie. I want to say there was three where there was just this intense hand-to-hand combat. A couple of the scenes were with Jason Statham, and then there was another one involving some of the other actors later in the flick. But it's a shark movie, and it just seemed weird that there was so much hand-to-hand violence in it, and these like elaborate fight scenes. It stuck out to me because it just felt like that should have been in a different movie. It just didn't seem like it fit in with, I don't know. I guess the premise of the movie. I mean, it's a shark movie, and I don't know, like why. It's not a martial arts flick, or a military flick. I don't know. It just seemed really strange to me. But again, maybe this is another thing that other viewers, it might not bother them as much as me. But again, I thought it stood out a lot. And then going back and looking at the movie as a whole, like at the beginning of the movie, they spend a good, I want to say 30 or 45 minutes of this movie actually down in this trench that the title of the movie references, below this thermal line where the Megs and all this other stuff exist. But what's going on down there, it just, I don't know, like I feel like it takes away from like the shark stuff a bit. I mean, typically, what works well for sharks is, when you're on the surface of the water, and you can't really see what's underneath it, that's kind of what builds tension. But I mean, it was 45 minutes down there, and they're walking around in these underwater space suits. Again, I understand we got to suspend some disbelief here, with this movie about these gigantic sharks. So I'm not going to nitpick it terribly, but I mean, the idea of these suits was ridiculous. So I mean, it was like they were walking on the moon for a half an hour. But and one of the things, while they're down there in the trench, they, there's megalodons down there, and they find them, and then apparently there's one huge one. I mean, they even make a reference to it that's the biggest Meg I've ever seen. Well, it's the biggest one anyone's ever seen. You usually don't call stuff out like that in a movie unless, there's going to be a payoff for it at some point later in the flick, which brings up another one of my gripes is I feel like there were these things set up at the beginning of the movie that had little or no payoff by the end of the movie. And this, biggest Meg that they've ever seen was one of the disappointments. You get to the end of the movie and you realize that this huge Meg didn't even come back up to the surface, or if it did, we never even seen it. Or maybe it was there and I just missed it somehow, but I really doubt it. And like there's scenarios where it was set up like I was expecting the big Meg to come in and kind of, do its thing and, wreak all kinds of havoc on everything, but it just never happened. I was like, well, why take the effort to call out that you have this huge one, the biggest one they've ever seen down there, only to never mention it ever again the rest of the movie? It's a very strange decision. And then also, at the beginning of the movie, you find out they have in captivity at their research facility their own Meg. That they've kept it, and they make note it's the only one in captivity, and they're trying to like train it. A guy's got a little clicker that the big shark responds to. It'll, if he clicks it once, it comes to him, and stuff like that. And so I, again, assumed, and maybe wrongfully, that was going to have some kind of payoff at some point in the movie too. Like maybe the shark is going to sacrifice itself for this person that it recognizes, or saves their asses somehow. And again, we get towards the end of the movie, and the only thing that comes of this is when it gets down, this shark is the last shark that's left alive. It doesn't eat this guy because he's got his little clicker. Like it doesn't save anybody or be heroic. It just doesn't kill him, and that was the big payoff for that awesome plot thread. Jesus.
Jesus.
You said it, man.
And finally, it's worth mentioning this movie has a few different call outs specifically to Jaws 2,
Some bad hat, Harry.
which I guess I'm not surprised since this is the Meg 2. If you've seen Jaws 2, spoiler alert incoming, the finale of that movie has Chief Brody sitting on a raft, and he's banging his paddle on the water to get the shark's attention to draw it away from the kids, and the big thing at the end, the shark comes right at him, and it leaps at him, and then ends up biting on a power line, and the electricity fries the shark, and that's how he kills it. And so in the Meg 2, they almost lift that from the movie completely. Jason Statham's character is banging on the water with a giant-ass helicopter propeller, because he's Jason Statham and he's super strong, and he gets the shark's attention. It comes flying at him, jumps out of the water. And differently from Jaws 2, he just spears it with this thing right through the top of its mouth and holds it up in the air until it eventually just falls off to the side. And yeah, and that, that was the big grand finale of that. So the big payoff and the big wow factor in this was completely taken from Jaws 2, which is probably not the Jaws movie you want to be taking ideas from, but that's just my opinion. So anyway, on the other side of this, one of the things that I did like about it was I thought the effects were decent in this movie. I mean, they were inconsistent. Some of the stuff didn't look real good. Some of the effects, like when Jason was out on his jet ski and trying to cruise around on the giant waves and whatever, some of that looked a little dodgy, But in general, I thought the sharks and just like how they got it to look with the fins coming out of the water as they're chasing Jason Statham's character around and vice versa. Some of that looks pretty slick. So, I mean, I think I can comfortably say, like, visually, it's easily, like, the most impressive shark movie that's been made up to this point. So it's got that going for it.
That's the biggest Meg I've ever seen.
Biggest Meg anyone's ever seen.
That's the apex predator.
All right, well, that's pretty much all I got on my review of Meg 2, The Trench. It was not a great flick. I'm sure there's going to be some people find it more entertaining than I did, but just being a big shark movie guy, I was hoping for a little more. So, Views from the Basement will be giving this movie 2 out of 5 stars. And, I don't know, I'm sure they're going to try it again. I'm sure the movie's going to sell a lot of tickets this weekend, so maybe with the third movie, they can do some things a little better. But thanks, guys, and I will see you next time.